Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. This episode 314. We are doing this live once again this week. I'm joined by my co-host Stacy. That is at Stacy Patton 89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing on this overcast Sunday?
Doing well. Just was watching some tennis in an overcast country in an overcast tournament. So
Yes, it is overcast. Can't cannot deny that the tennis has been okay. Doesn't have the same pizzazz it once held for me.
that's sad. Hopefully, you got to watch Carlos Alcaraz, man. That guy could bring some magic back to your viewership.
Yeah, I mean he's fun, but we'll see. The inevitable Djokovic at all, inevitable Djokovic of it all doesn't help it. All right. Before we get started, a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strick.land on Instagram, posting all kinds of content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where if you're watching this right now, you have to be watching on YouTube. So please hit like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise. You can buy that on our website. We've got t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, all kinds of stuff on there. So check that out. And then finally, the Strickland has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to a number of different tiers. There is a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to the Strickland Mailbag, hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, aka the Doug Bag, alongside Dallas Amico. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod, where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. There are further tiers, $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. This comes with a variety of additional benefits like listening on our pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day. Whether you choose to subscribe or not, none of this would be possible without you, and none of this would be possible without BetOnline, which is your number one source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games, available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Um, the game has started. The games have started. Summer League games have started anyway. I don't know if you've been watching. I have barely been watching. I did watch the Victor Wembanyama debut. I watched I watched the Knicks for about fucking 2 quarters maybe. But yes, Summer League's happening. If that's your thing, that's cool. I'm pretty checked out on Summer League. I'm sure cool stuff is happening, but don't really care about any of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are to speak on kind of this might be a little bit of a tangent or a chord if you really want to get nerdy. I think that people have been lamenting the fact that the Knicks haven't drafted anyone in the last. I mean, they drafted Trevor Keels, but from summer league performances, doesn't really seem like the kind of needle mover the Knicks have drafted. Otherwise, I think it's worth appreciating a little bit that we're not hanging on every summer league performance right now. I was thinking about this, like I haven't watched summer league at all. And I asked myself, like, well, why don't I care? Right now, there's guys, I will probably at some point go back and watch guys like Ahmed Thompson and Scoot and some of the top prospects just because I have an interest in the draft. But I just, from a Knicks fan perspective, I haven't been invested at all. That's kind of a good thing because every year it seems like we've been invested in. 2 years ago is quickly would have a bad shooting night in summer league but put up 30, and it's like, well, I don't know. And summer league has been important for the Knicks, right? Last year, I think a big wow, I wanted to say portender, but that's not the right word. There is something that portended more, kind of Quentin Grimes' growth was how much he was the guy in summer league for the second best team. They lost to Portland twice and they lost the finals. But, the creation reps they were giving him, the physicality showed on his drives. the versatility, and of course the defense, and the stuff we knew he could do was there. Those things have been important. This year, it's just not. The Knicks have ascended past that level, and if you think about it, yeah, there's a reason Nuggets fans and Lakers fans is a little bit different. Nuggets fans and Celtics fans and all the teams that have been at that level for a long time aren't hanging on every summer league game. And the Knicks are at that point right now. And yeah, it has something to do with the fact that they haven't used their draft picks, and people can debate whether that was a good idea or a bad idea. But the fact is, like, even if we had drafted someone, or even if we had traded in the first round, it wouldn't be some make or break thing to see whether he was, a game changer.
Maybe not for you, but let me tell you, there will definitely be people that are.
Yeah. But I've just been pretty sanguine about it, and I think that it's a sign of progress that we're not watching every summer league game. Like, come on, is there a hope here? Desperately, betting on Pyomai or whatever. Pyomai was a champion, so that's a different story.
Great value, Pyomai. You got to let her run her race,
She deserved to live.
You fucking killed her, didn't you? Look. So I mean, I think it's interesting because, I think the way teams operate, obviously, every team operates differently. It's not like every single team does the same thing. If they did, that would be a problem. But when you think about how the Knicks have used their first round picks, right? So you use one first round pick effectively to land. I mean, they've used their last 2 first round picks to get guards, right? A wing, whatever you want to say, to upgrade the current roster, right? So it's not like these are not moves they've made because they're like, well, 3 years from now, this pick can help us. No, it's more like, okay, maybe the guy we pick now could help us, but we know what we're going to acquire after trading out this pick.
And they've gotten future assets.
Yeah, they've gotten protected future first out of it. We'll see what those things turn into. But they've traded out value to get value now, or future value, I guess. And I mean, not that it's exactly future value, but the idea of future value to return more immediate value. And I think people just struggle with that because it's the Knicks. And I think a lot of it is like, oh my God, are we going back to not caring about trading first round picks and all that kind of stuff? And what I will say is this, whether you agree with it or not, when you make moves like that, those moves, like I said, you traded out future value for immediate value. Those moves have to return immediate value. And in the Knicks case, they have done so in pretty significant fashion. They traded last year's first round pick to eventually get to clear the cap space to land Jalen Brunson and Isaiah Hartenstein, but primarily Jalen Brunson. They also netted 3 protected firsts out of that, but let's not get into the nitty-gritty. Just saying they effectively traded that first, which was the 11th overall pick, to create the cap space to sign Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson, who I think, however you feel about his game, and I think most Knicks fans love him, I think we can all agree to some extent he is at least a all-star.
He has the ball all the time, Schwinn.
Yeah.
So that cuts his points in half.
Yeah.
Basically, he's a scrub. He has the ball too much. So he's a scrub.
He's an all-star level guard. I think we can all agree on that. They traded this year's first, which I think is worth noting. They hedged against. The trade wasn't just trade this year's first. It was trade this year's lottery protected first for Josh Hart. If it didn't convey, they would have. So if they had ended up in the lottery, they would have sent 4 seconds instead. Anyway, point being is they end up trading the first for Josh Hart. Josh Hart comes in, has a massive impact on the team. And I think.
Do you think it's fair to say they traded 2 firsts because they did trade a first for Cam Reddish?
If we're going to be technical, they traded fucking, we can play the transaction game all the way to the genesis of it, but no, I'm not going to do that. They traded a first for Josh Hart. If they wouldn't have traded 2, they would not have traded 2 picks for Josh Hart. They would have only traded 1. They traded 1 anyway. The point being is, I think the difficulty that people have with this is well, where are we going to improve moving forward? And look, I'm not here to dismiss that idea because I think you can't get complacent. I do think, and I don't think the Knicks are complacent. I don't think they've been complacent, but you can't be complacent. So you always have to be looking to improve. So, and I think the Knicks have done that. But this is not dissimilar to what the Celtics have done the last couple of years, and they've gotten a lot of praise for it. I actually have praised them for it also. I think it's like a good strategy. They traded a future first-round pick to get Derek White. That guy stepped into the rotation and was a big reason why in 2021, 2022, they went to the NBA Finals, and
What did they trade for Brogdon?
I'm going to get to that. And then last summer, they traded a first-round pick and a bunch of other shit. And by the way, I want to just note this. They traded away Aaron Nesmith, who 2 years before that was the 14th overall pick in the draft. So, oh my God, they burned a lottery pick for a vet. Like, nobody cared about that. And that's because, and I think this is where the Knicks, my opinion, and this is my opinion, this is where I think there's a discrepancy between how the Knicks view themselves internally versus how everybody views the Celtics, right? When the Celtics made those trades, everybody had the feeling that the Celtics were, even, when they traded for Derek White, when they traded for Malcolm Brogdon, this is a very, very good team. This is a contender that is trying to push the margins to win a championship. Okay. And the Knicks I don't think they're necessarily a contender now. And I don't think they were a contender when they did the Jalen Brunson trade. But what I would guess is they thought getting Jalen Brunson put them a lot closer than most other people did. And I think they would have also bet at the deadline getting Josh Hart, put them into a category, bumped them up, however you want to phrase it, to a level that they weren't at. And they were comfortable trading those picks for the immediate upward mobility to get closer to a contention level. And I don't actually think, and we can talk about this more if you want, I don't think there's a major gap between where the Knicks are today and true contention. I think you're talking about one.
I don't think there's any gap, so I have a more extreme.
Yeah, maybe more. Yeah, you're more extreme than me. But like, I think you're talking about the right guy that you make a move in with your chips and whatever. We can all forget all in, put all your chips in, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I don't think the Knicks are that far off. And so, do I advise them to keep trading future first round picks? No, I don't think they should just that should not just be your always MO. Like you should not always be willing to do this. But I think the Knicks they took risks. These are always risks when you trade first round picks. They took risks. And, is there a world where they don't trade for the cap space to get Jalen Brunson? They draft Jalen Williams and we're all happy? Sure. Maybe that world is there too. And we can debate that to the end of time. What would that have been? What would that have looked like? What would the ceiling of that team be in? But the path they took isn't bad, and it obviously resulted in them landing a franchise point guard for the first time since basically Michael Ray Richardson discovered cocaine. So, I think.
Hey, respect Jared Jack. Come on now.
I like Jared Jack, but let's call
I don't know if they had franchise point guards. I'm gonna interject. Ray Felton was a good point guard. Stephon Marbury fit all the boxes of a franchise point guard and work out for other reasons, but
yeah, it turns out when you start eating Vaseline, you might not be a franchise point guard.
I think that Michael Ray Richardson is going back a bit far. Like you yourself are a Derek Harper fan.
I like Derek Harper. Derek Harper was not.
Well, he was at the end of his career, but
if you was going to be the best player,
he was a very capable.
Would have won the '94 MVP, Finals MVP, if we'd won the championship.
I think that's just. I mean, our blog is named after a guy they found who played pretty damn well, and Mark Jackson was pretty good in his stead. So it's I do think that's overstating it, but I also agree with your larger point that Brunson's a fucking.
I think Brunson this year was better. Than
I would say he is the best player we've had since Patrick Ewing. I don't think that's my take. Like I think already I would put him over Melo.
Hopefully we don't have too many Melo stands in here. They won't be happy.
I would already put him over Melo. Like he does the same shit. He's just way more efficient, and he passes more. And Melo was a better defender, but that's not saying a whole lot. So
yeah, look, all my point is I think because the view of the Knicks' two best players, right? It's Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, and the view on, I think Brunson actually is viewed pretty favorably at this point by most people. Maybe he doesn't get the full respect he deserves, but I think almost everybody, Knicks fans, non-Knicks fans alike, are of the opinion that Jalen Brunson is an excellent player. How excellent, again, those things, your mileage could vary there, but for the most part, everybody agrees, great player. Julius Randle, obviously a lot more divisive, and the jury is still out on one, how will he perform in the playoff? Like, can he perform in the playoffs rather? And then the jury's out on, can he be consistent in the regular season? And I don't mean like, can he have a great regular season front to back, but can you string together great seasons in a row? He hasn't done that yet. He's had 2 out of 3 seasons that were great, but sandwiched in between was a huge turd sandwich. So we have to see that the jury's still on those things. But like, I think because those guys are not viewed at the level of, say, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, that the optics of trading their first round picks is a lot more controversial. And because they don't have the history of success, playoff success, that a team like Boston has, right? Boston has been to how many fucking Eastern Conference finals in the last 7-8 years? I don't know. What is it, like 5, I think? They've gone to NBA finals. Like, they obviously have more established pedigree as a contender, competitive team, whatever. The Knicks don't have that established yet.
Makes sense coming from a fan of a team that went to the Super Bowl 4 straight times and lost. Oh,
I don't know if that's an own or not. You fucking lost the Super Bowl this year, pal. Shut up. But like, I think the view is just different because of that. And I don't know. I don't know if that's wrong. Like, I don't know if people, they could end up being right. They could end up being, maybe a year from now we're sitting here, the Knicks, have a bad regular season, or they disappoint in the regular season, don't get as far in the playoffs, and fucking who knows? Like, who's drafted 23rd? Chris Murray is killing it out in Portland, and we all have egg on our face. Maybe that's possible, but
he'd have to kill it on a large level to outperform.
Yeah, he would. And I just think, like, the choices they've made are open to criticism in a way the choices that Boston has made are not as open to criticism, more based on trust in those teams' best players over time, because they've established themselves over time in a way that Brunson and Randle haven't, and because the franchise itself has been good for a long time now. So, like, if the Knicks put together another season like they did this year, will that narrative change? Maybe. But, I think the choices they've made to trade their first round pick the last couple of years, like, it's just weird to me to be like, oh, they don't value the draft anymore. I don't really see it like that. I just think they saw opportunities to jump up the win curve in a more immediate, with more immediate impact, that they thought was worth taking, versus continuing to draft and develop and see how these things go year on year and being patient. And I'm not, like, again, I wouldn't even say they're being impatient, but the draft is more volatile. Whereas if you identify the right player personnel talent upgrades in terms of free agency and in trades, those returns are often a lot more immediate. And the Knicks have nailed their last, look at the last, forget DiVincenzo, but like the last 3 guys they've effectively brought in, right, are Jalen Brunson, huge hit. Isaiah Hartenstein, huge hit for them. I think especially after the first, 25, 30 games. Josh Hart, huge hit. Like, they've really knocked it out of the park on those last 3 moves in, again.
And each of them, you would say, Jalen Brunson for whatever it is, average value $25 million, but descending contract. That's a huge surplus. There's surplus value. He is playing like a max player, and nothing of that seems not sustainable. Hartenstein, they've signed for $8 million a year, plays like a starting center. Even, you didn't mention this, we signed Mitchell Robinson for 4 years, $60 million a year. Remember, a lot of people were like, we're paying $50 million, we could have just had Duran, right? In a world where Dylan Brooks is getting $20 million a year, you cannot criticize that Mitchell Robinson contract. So it's not just the fact that they've got good guys. They're all on surplus value deals. We'll see what happens with Hart's extension. But so far, Hart is on a plus. Like the value they have given up to get him, over. And people are going to be like, oh, the development of Quickly. I don't think Quickly and Grimes' development has been hurt. They traded Obi Toppin. If you think Hart,
well, it's just weird to me if you're going to say Quickly and Grimes' development has been hurt because of Josh Hart. Like, doesn't it stand to reason then that whoever they would have drafted with that pick, their development would be hurt by Quickly and Grimes' presence on the roster? Like, I don't really understand that. And honestly, like, I'm just going to say this because I think it's true. Like, I get when you're rebuilding that you really want to be cognizant of creating and making sure that guys have minutes to play. But even that paradigm is shifting in the NBA when you look at teams like, obviously what Houston did this offseason, but even development teams like OKC. Like, do you really think like Trey Mann has a fucking shot to get minutes there? Ty Washington, who they just traded for, Usman Garuba.
I'm glad you said that on this podcast and not in
Yeah,
press, because Trey
Usman
Man slander will not be.
It's not slander. I actually think he has a. I say this stuff because I think look. If I'm a team that doesn't have draft capital, that especially first round draft capital, I'd be talking to teams like OKC and be like, hey, what can I give you 2 seconds for Trey Man? Can I do that? Like, there's too much talent on a lot of these rebuilding teams. So getting minutes is hard. It's competitive. It should be competitive. It shouldn't just be handed to you. And I think the guys that are in this proverbial 9-man rotation for the Knicks right now, all to some degree, we can debate, who deserves more minutes, who deserves less, how should the minutes be distributed. But all those guys have earned their keep and they've earned those minutes. And so like to me, there's an argument to be made that like drafting guys, especially this year, forget last year's a little bit different, but drafting a guy this year would have just burned a rookie year off his a year of his rookie contract, because he probably had no path to getting minutes, because this is not like, oh, well, who cares about Evan Fournier? We drafted Quentin Grimes. This is like, no, like, we still have Quentin Grimes. I prioritize him over the guy I drafted 23rd overall. Like, oh no, we still have Emmanuel Quickly. Sorry, I prioritize him right now over the guy we picked 23rd overall.
And the question would have been, like, I think this is where you were going, if we had drafted a Noah Clowney, right? And we were
who I still would have been very on board with doing.
Yeah, but he would have taken that role, right? He would have taken that Obi Toppin role, which would have been perfect for a guy like Noah Clowney, because he probably should only get. He's an energy guy, very good on defense. The offense still being figured out. He would have been a guy you could slot in for those minutes. I think a lot of the reaction to kind of, we have just now, like, for us as Knicks fans, at least people, we're kind of the same age. So, people came up as Knicks fans, when you're young, maybe in the 90s happened and they were good. And then the 2000s and the disaster that was, there's some hardcore heuristics you form in your head, right? One of them is don't trade first round picks at all, period. One of them is do not trade potential future value for present value. But I think we have to realize is the environment that shaped those things. During the late noughts, as they're called, and the early 2010s, that's how teams operated. That's why Daryl Morey had so much success, doing things like trading to Sacramento, bad contracts and getting a ton of picks for it, because Sacramento was like, but these are good players, right? And I'm not here to validate Morey ball or anything. What I'm saying is the league in the past has been very short-term focused. If you are a follower of the financial markets, you realize there's a lot of parallels here. Trades like this, if they're going to be mutually beneficial, are usually someone benefits in the short term in exchange for the other team benefiting the long term. They can be win-win. That view has gone away, where it's just like, no, you only should be prioritizing long term. And there's a reason for that, because most of the teams that prioritize short term took it to unreasonable extents and not backed by there is a balance between trading for short-term gain versus long-term gain. And that balance heavily shifted the way it has, by the way, the way it had at around the same time in the larger economy at whole. But especially, focusing on this part, you had this idea that, like, people who traded first round picks for maybe more immediate returns it was always an overpay. That's what it was, and that's factual to state. That has changed though.
Well,
there was an article.
It's also like the willingness of GM. Like, again, I have to bring this up.
Let me finish. I think I might be. There was an article about Morey. I think it was one of the Michael Lewis books.
Yeah, it's in New York Times.
Yeah, and like he would just ask for like, oh, take off that protection, or let me add this protection for top 10. And there was no negotiation over that, right? Like people were just like, oh, to get it done, fine, you can have top 10 protection, right? Those things matter. And now I think teams realize that matters. And it's just a lot difficult. Like the shift between teams prioritize short term over long term, and that's the arbitrage opportunity, has shifted a lot. And now maybe it's not to the other end. The bet the Knicks have made at times is that there are opportunities where teams are actually over prioritizing long term. And you just brought up a good point. Oklahoma City has thought long term so much, stacking up these prospects and these picks. They're probably going to lose some value there because they can't find value. They cannot find minutes for everyone, and everybody knows that. They're going to have to get and with the contract restrictions.
They have 35 picks in the next 7 drafts. 17 of them are first rounders,
and they already have so many young guys, as you mentioned, right? Yeah, like so the needle has swung, if not all the way in that direction, more to that direction, and the Knicks have capitalized on the opportunities they could. So what I'm saying is, we need to the mindset of we should never trade a future first or a first right now for immediate, someone who might pan out in 2 or 3 years for somebody who can help us now. That the calculus around that is different now because teams have reacted and markets are always evolving. Like heuristics don't last long in any kind of adaptive market. And I think you'd know that a lot better than me. So.
Yeah. I mean, the market is what it is. I think in terms of like, if there is, I think the Knicks have actually arbitraged OKC pretty well in the draft previously. They've gotten like extra picks for them just because they have so many fucking picks. They're like,
that's how they got Deuce and Yoko. Everyone complains about Jokic. They got one of them for free. Yeah. And whatever people want to say about Deuce McBride, by the way, I am convinced. What was it, Game 4 or Game 3?
Game 4, it was the Cavs, right?
Yeah, he had 5 minutes there. That changed the fucking game. And like, I'm not anyone who wants to tell me Deuce McBride wasn't worth it, or we had a shitty draft that year, and Quentin Grimes wasn't enough, or they don't play him enough. Like, Deuce McBride was not a throwaway pick. And maybe he'll leave for nothing. Maybe they won't get much for him, but he's contributed. So,
yeah. It's fine. I'm not too pressed about it. I think it's more like they arbitrage that. They traded down from 32 to 34 and 36. That was like a huge value if you did one of those value chart trades, it'd be a huge win. They got 3 protected first for the 11th pick last year, and people can do whatever they want with however they feel about that trade. But if you looked at like the commentary coming into that draft and then actually like the grading of that trade, most objective or observers, I guess you would say, felt the Knicks did well in that transaction. So whatever you feel about that, they did get like 3 future ones. Obviously, we'll see if they end up turning into ones or what they turn into for the 11th pick. It's not like they just traded it for hot air. So I think there are opportunities with OKC because they just have so many fucking picks. And maybe that's part of their plan, right? It's like, well, whenever we decide that it's time to start going to, go get stars, we will just be able to overpay and then still have room and like assets to overpay again, and then have assets to overpay one more fucking time if we need to. Like maybe that's their plan. It's not a terrible plan, but it is a plan that results in stuff like, guys like Trey Mann probably not being able to get minutes. Like a guy like Pokusevski, he's 3 years into his career, like we talk about Obi Toppin, how he got kind of squeezed out of minutes here. And I think that obviously that was for a lot different reasons. And I would say that the Knicks didn't handle that well, flat out in a lot of ways. But a guy like Pokusevski, he's got a year left on his rookie contract. And I mean, how many minutes is he really looking at on this OKC team next year? Probably not many.
Well, I think Pokusevski is a cautionary tale for like, I think I'm still reasonably comfortable in my pre-draft evaluation. What I didn't take into account is that it's probably going to take him to a second contract to get there, but he's not Kevin Knox. But yeah,
no, he got better last year for sure.
And I just think the guy is going to be a decent player.
Yeah, and I actually will say this: I think when the Knicks first started, well, not when the Knicks first started. When the Knicks first started, I wasn't born. But when Leon Rose first took over with the Knicks,
You
I
got
think
you got a couple grays in there, Schwinn. Are you sure about
it's
that?
more than a couple. When Leon took over, I think they put an emphasis on we want to draft guys that we think can come in and play NBA basketball today. Like they can help contribute on the floor immediately. And I think that's why you saw them take a guy, an older prospect like Obi Toppin 8th. I think that's why they took Emmanuel Quickly 25th, the guy that they felt comfortable could come in and do things at the NBA level. That's why they took a guy like Quentin Grimes, who you didn't exactly need to squint to see what role he could play from day one in the NBA. Deuce McBride, who had a safe floor defensively. And honestly, it's just weird that the shot has not fallen at all at the NBA level because he is such a good shooter, and even his G League stuff has been incredible too. Maybe just he needs reps, and maybe that'll happen for him this year. Who knows? I think, but either way, the point is they valued that stuff, and I kind of think while they haven't had draft picks, obviously in the last couple of years, it feels like they've deviated from that now because their rotation is full and they are in a win now mode where it feels like now they're comfortable taking younger guys who need time to develop away from the big team, aren't prepared necessarily for NBA minutes. And I think the Keels pick was just, I don't know, he looks pretty bad to me. But like Jalen Martin is another guy. He's 19. He 1 year out of high school, but he's the guy that they kind of went after first with their 2-way contract. And I do wonder if they're like if they do take someone next year, if they continue going down this path of now we're comfortable taking guys who need a longer development track because we don't need them to play immediately. Or maybe they make a consolidation trade or something and they have to go back because they do need guys now to replenish their depth. It'll be interesting to see how they manage it, but I do think like you can't just I think how you draft has to take into account where your team is, like in terms of how competitive you are, how good the existing talent on your NBA roster is. And
So
so,
can I ask you kind of a follow up there?
Yeah.
So I think if there is something to criticize, it is that about the Knicks drafting, it's that they've taken so many guards under 6'5", right? They took Rokas, McBride, and Grimes in the same draft a year after taking Quickly. The next year they took. We can talk about second round picks. No reason to cry about it, but it was a pick they used, and he's 6'3".
He does have the body of a power forward.
Do you think they've done this because that just is where they see opportunity, right? These undersized guys who can play maybe bigger than they are. Besides Keel, they've all been very proven shooters. Do you think that has what driven it? Is because that's where the Knicks were, where they needed to hit singles. And the best way they knew how to hit singles late in the draft was with these combo guards who they seem to really, be good at identifying. And maybe have identified that those guys get undervalued because they're not true point guards, but neither wing size, right? Do you think that has played into it? And do you think maybe they've over-indexed on that a little bit?
I honestly am not sure. I think, maybe, but the sample just seems too small at this point to say that. And like, they did take a shot with Cam Reddish. So and then we know they've had interest now, long registered interest in OG Anunoby. They made an offer last year. They kicked the tires on Paul George this offseason. I think they know they need that wing. Like they know they need that big wing. I just don't know if they've had maybe the grades they had on various guys where they were picking in the draft. They didn't.
And I think that's part of it, right? Because if somebody's going to fall to 27, I think the calculus or the kind of decision making that's gone on in their mind is that if it's a 6'7" wing who has like tools and all of that, and he's available at 27 or 28, there's probably something really wrong with him. Whereas if it's a 6'4" guy who can shoot well, you can probably we can probably take that chance, especially guys we've seen defend. Does that make sense? Or like, it seems to me like they would rather take a chance on Quentin Grimes, who fell as well, than Brandon Boston, or than another guy like
Boston.
Jackson.
But But Grimes had a like stable floor. I think they knew what they had in him.
Grimes was a 6'4". I mean, there's a reason there were people who did not like the pick. He's 6'4" with a 6'8" wingspan. It's okay. He's 2 guard sized. You know, he was a really good shooter. That's about it. No movement off the dribble, and it's like, does he have that positionality? Can he guard threes? I think there was even question if he would be a great point of attack defender. That's probably just a draft miss. But sorry, like a quick point guard defender. That was just a big miss. But the point is, like, those guys who are undersized, like even Quickly, like the idea was like, well, Quickly is a really, like, he was a great defender at Kentucky, by the way. Go watch his tape. But the question was, like, but he can just defend guards, right? Like, what does that matter? Grimes can defend guards. Does that give me much? And he's a shooter. Fine, we can find these guys, right? Whereas a guy who's 6'7", 6'8", you'd be like, oh, one day, he might be able to guard 3 or 4 positions and finish at a high level, right? I think you're just. I think with the Knicks, my point is that I think the Knicks have, again, maybe this is related to the other thing we're thinking about. The Knicks have traded some of that super upside that's less probable for the fact that I know Grimes and Quickly are going to come in, be good team defenders, hit open shots, and do these things, right? Even though the perception of them is that they're limited because of their size.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer it. I would guess, like, I mean, you could say, why didn't they take Jaden McDaniel instead of Quickly? I don't know.
Or Bane, I guess. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's I think it goes more to the Grimes. No, I think that it's not so much about that. It's more about, I think they've made the right choice. Do you think that's a strategy they've been employing? Just like preferring combo guards. What I'm saying is, are combo guards that are available in the late at 25 to 30 just better bets than 6'7", 6'8" wings because of biases that teams might have early in the draft?
I think it's all just about skill sets. Like, they clearly wanted guys who can shoot, who can pull up shoot, who have good shooting performances that they've logged on tape. It's not just theoretical, like, oh, I like his form, like he shot well from college 3. It's like, no, guys that they have track records on of shooting. Even like Obi, like, he shot well in college from 3, and honestly, his offensive, like, if you go back and look at his synergy college shit, like, I'm not joking. If you look at like every fucking play type, it's literally like 99 percentile, 99 percentile, 97th percentile, 99th percentile. Like, it's just fucking everything is amazing for him in there. So I think they prioritize just genuine statistical production, coupled with guys that they at least internally felt like had upside to be more.
And to defend. They haven't defended.
And well, not Obi, but I mean, not that Obi was. I still like. I don't think Obi is a great defender.
In college, he was bad.
Yeah,
so
he was a bad defender in college.
But other than Obi, everyone they've drafted has been at least a plus defender, and most have been like really good defenders at the level they were playing. So
yeah, I mean, at least the guys in the first 2 draft classes. I don't know enough about Keels. I didn't watch fucking Keels in college. I don't know.
Keels was a solid defender, dude.
Yeah,
that was.
And I don't know shit about Jalen Martin, so whatever, we'll see. But yeah, like, I think that they wanted those baseline level things, and they wanted guys with shooting pedigree and that had established samples as shooters. So that's what I really think more than anything. And like Jaden McDaniels, I really like him as a player, but I mean, it'd be surprising if I don't even know his college numbers, but I would bet he was not shooting.
No, he had he was a 6'9", 6'8" recruit, whatever. It's like he was highly rated. Because it's like a 6'9", 6'10" guy with ball skills in high school is going to be highly rated, and he's going to get Kevin Durant comparisons. That's just a fact of life these days. And at Washington, that didn't work out. And he played the 2-3 zone at Washington, so he couldn't really showcase his defensive abilities. So it was a weird case.
They put him in the Tybal role.
What? Yeah, exactly. And Tybal took to it more than he did as well. And Tybal was a senior when he was drafted too. So, I mean, there's all those things, but I think that makes a lot of sense. I do want to highlight a comment we got from Ace Bouchard. Knicks drafted a lot of chodes, short but thick. I just thought that was hilarious. I wanted to shout out that comment. So,
I thought something serious.
Chodes. As I was like, what does he mean by that? But no, actually, I now I see it. So
yeah, I just think that's what it was. And look, if they, not every 6'8", 6'9" guy is good either. I mean, that's worth saying.
that's
like,
the point, right?
Yeah, like you have to pick guys that you like, that you personally like, that your team evaluates, that your scouts evaluate, and you guys have a good feeling about. Maybe they just didn't have a good feeling about whoever the fuck was available, or maybe they had good feelings about them, but they were like, we like Emmanuel Quickly more, or we like Quentin Grimes more. And I think it's worth noting with Quentin Grimes, I think most people would say the Nuggets are like a very good drafting team. They were going to take Quentin Grimes. He had a promise from the Denver Nuggets at 26.
Then they took my guy.
Yeah, and then the Knicks took Quentin Grimes at 25, one pick before. So like,
and by the other guys the Knicks were between with him was Bones. Right?
Yeah,
so like,
they
had a pretty similar evaluation.
But it's funny because, I mean, I remember watching during the finals this year. I was reminded of that, like how Grimes was kind of their pick, and I was like, what, Grimes would be fucking awesome on this team. Like, he'd be amazing on this team. So like, again, this is less to do with anything. It's just like a fun thing to think about. But yeah, like,
I mean, any shooter is going to be great next to Nikola Jokic. I think Grimes would be.
I just think the Knicks, they've drafted how they drafted, and it's fine. But I do think it's worth noting, like, I still don't buy this idea now that like they don't value the draft. People, like, Knicks fans just have fucking PTSD about the draft. And I do too. And I remember this, and I know this because every fucking year we have a lottery pick. You get like, look, when you're in that lottery position, right? Especially when you have like the 6th or 7th or 8th or whatever pick you got there, that mid to late lotto spot, you get put into like 9 billion rumors. Like, oh, the Knicks have had conversations. They're armed with the 11th pick to go get Malcolm Brogdon, or they can do this thing with that pick. They can get this guy with that pick. They might trade. They've had conversations with this team about trading this thing for that pick for this guy. And it's like, I remember being like, oh my God, if the Knicks trade this pick, I'm going to be so fucking pissed. Guess what? They didn't trade like lottery picks for nothing most of the time. I mean, they traded the 11th pick. We all freaked out about it. They got Jalen Brunson. Turned out pretty okay. Like,
and they got people keep dismissing the 3. They're protected. They don't matter. Well, okay, if they end up 25th, the Knicks have done pretty well with 25th. If they get traded for like a vet, like, we know that one protected first is probably more than Obi Toppin is worth. So if you can get you more than Obi Toppin, like, these aren't worthless assets. They're probably not, the needle movers in a star trade, but people are acting like we just traded this 11th pick for nothing. And the 11th pick could have ended up being Johnny Davis or something. What do you think his value is right now? So,
Johnny Davis? Oh, yeah.
Well, Johnny Davis went before that 11th pick, but let's say he fell to 11 and they kept the pick and drafted him. Do you think his value would really be better than 3 protected first right now? I'm pretty skeptical of that. So, that was what a lot of Knicks fans wanted us to do. Or like even Duren. Like, who's giving up a ton for Duren right now? Really? You think Duren is worth multiple first? I don't.
I just, the draft or trade value is so hard to know. I mean, maybe you could probably get maybe a first for Jalen Duren. I don't know. I have no clue. But I don't really care.
But it's not like we passed up some incredible value, right? I mean, maybe the guy turns into Joel Embiid or Bam.
I just think this. People don't fucking value cap space anymore. Like, they don't do it. Like, they just like, so we just traded this for cap space? Like, yes. But like, if your cap space is now converted into something good, that changes. And also, just inherently having cap space has fucking value. And I've been saying this for years. Like, this is why I thought the Porzingis trade was fine. In real time, I thought it was fine. Because I'm like, there is a fucking value to just having flexibility.
They got a two-time All-NBA player with that cap space.
Even if they didn't, the entire point is judging that trade in real time. Like, teams have pick value on cap space. That's like a thing that they do. That, if you're a bad team and you have cap space, you're going to be like, okay, you want to dump a bad contract on us that's going to take up $18 million of my cap space. This is the value of that thing. You have to give me this much draft equity. And like, so there's just an inherent value in cap space that people don't bake into trades when you create them. And I think, like, going back to your point about, trading picks, that, what happened is, I truly believe this. And I think the same, like, during the mid 2000s, or not mid 2000s, so mid 2010s, if you want to call it. Two things happened that became accepted as like, just it just became accepted wisdom, right? The first one, which now looks wildly fucking stupid. Okay, this is the first one. Centers don't matter. And that happened not because centers stopped magically mattering. No, it happened because, again, I've talked about this like numerous times. If you go back and look at the drafts after Anthony Davis gets picked until like Joel Embiid, Kristaps, Jokic, these guys get drafted, there's like a 4 or 5 year gap in between. Go look at the centers that were picked. Like the best one is probably like Boogie, who I really like Boogie, but how good he was is very up for debate. And that's about it. Like the rest of it was a terrible period for centers.
Embiid got drafted.
Yeah. But Embiid was 2013. That's my point. Like there's a cycle. There was like 4 or 5 years where you just didn't have fucking good centers getting picked. And like there's this.
What about Timofey Mozgov?
No. Okay. And there's just this gap that exists for like 5 years. And then magically, of course, at the same time, this Warriors team comes up. And you had like the Heat, obviously, who didn't play with the true center or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And then like, so you had this like run for like 5 or 6 or 7 years, just mixed in with like the Spurs randomly in between, where you had teams winning without like traditional bigs or like whatever, like true centers, whatever you like, however you want to, again, phrase that. And so this became common with accepted wisdom. Oh, centers don't matter anymore. Obviously, centers now matter because the league trends follow fucking talent. They don't follow like they don't just like happen.
But I would say it's more than that because I think the league trends. I agree, it follows talent, and I think the point you're making is not the point you're making is valid, right? Like there was a low quality of center talent. I think also probably goes back to development, right? I think that it became clear that the higher floor way to get into the show, so to speak, as a big man was probably to do more of the wingish things, right? So some of the other skills that maybe were emphasized more were not emphasized as much. What I will say is this: I don't think it's just talent, though. I think it's also I don't think traditional point guards exist anymore. I don't think.
But this is what I mean.
Traditional power forwards.
Guys just needed time.
No, I think it's also schemes have adapted, right? That's my point.
But
schemes have adapted that if you can't shoot, you can't be an effective point guard really unless you're Ja Morant. If you cannot,
so the league. This is the point though. The league doesn't just it follows the fucking talent. The talent.
No, I think it follows scheme adaptation. It follows scheme adaptation as well, right? Like teams have shifted their schemes. Or am I saying that Shaq wouldn't be effective today? No. What I am saying is
but point guards are different than centers. Like that's not the same thing.
But I'm saying that just having a post-up game and that's it is even the best post player the best player in the world is an effective post player. That's not all he does, right? So I think centers have had to do the centers still have to be great in the post. They still have to do the traditional big things. They also have to do other things. Like as teams get better, centers have had to get better, and that's a good thing. And I think centers probably took a little bit longer to catch up than maybe other positions. But the Andre Mills of the world, where he was an all-star point guard in the 90s, he'd probably be something like DeLon Wright today or a little bit, maybe a starter.
That's fine. We're not going to see eye to eye on this, but that's not even my point. This is just one piece of accepted wisdom that happened and now looks fucking stupid. The second thing that happened was, trading picks, unless you're like, if you're not a championship caliber team, trading picks is awful and the worst thing you can do. And if you're not using cap space to take bad contracts for draft capital, that's the worst thing you can do. If you're not a championship contender or you're not a good team, that's the worst thing you can do. And that's just fucking stupid. And I've talked, drives me nuts. Like Moneyball is not finding a strategy and only sticking to that strategy forever. No, the idea of Moneyball is finding value where teams are not looking. And so if every team in the NBA now subscribes to the idea that, you can't trade any first round pick for like a good vet if you're not a championship contender, guess what? There's probably value there. You're probably going to find value there. Like there's value in different ways. And maybe, and this is what I mean, I'm find it that's why I find it interesting how the Knicks have gone after a guy like Trevor Keels last year at pick 42. Granted, these aren't high value assets they use, but they did use them. And then they signed Jalen Martin to a two-way contract because they've gone now very young with the guys they've brought in terms of like draft picks and whatever you want to call that. I just think like there's still a lot of people still stuck on this idea of like, you can't, trading first is bad. And if it doesn't return you a player who makes you a championship contender, it's bad. And like, that's the standard. And it's like, well, look, did Josh Hart make us a contender? Maybe not. But like, are you closer to being a contender? Yes. And does he open up possibilities in terms of like, or like, for example, if the Knicks traded RJ Barrett now, are they better positioned to like take that hit because they have another wing player who can eat some minutes and play both at the 2 and the 3 a bit? Yeah, I think they are better positioned for that now than in the world where they didn't have Josh Hart. I mean, I've seen like 15 fucking articles. Katz wrote an article last week, and a lot of people have talked about this. It was like, oh, the Knicks are still really thin on the wing. They're really thin on the wing. They were thinner on the wing last year before they acquired Josh Hart. They had 2 wings that they were playing, and one of them is Grimes, who you just mentioned is kind of like more of a guard size, 6'4" with a 6'8" wingspan. RJ Barrett was in some ways the only true wing on the roster, and even Josh Hart is like a smaller wing, but at least he is a wing. So, like, I just think like there are the conversations about this stuff can get way too narrow-minded. And I think the same in terms of like there are people that are like, well, like, I don't like the entire the baseline of any conversation. Like, if you're just gonna say like I don't think it's fine to trade picks for players. I also think it's fine if you're like, hey, look, like I do think like taking a rookie at this spot could have had value to us for such and such reasons. I don't think those like it's one or the other. I think both those things can exist, and what a team chooses to do, like they can choose one of those 2 paths if they really want to, and doesn't make one of those choices wrong and one of them right. But there's value to all of it, I guess, is kind of my point. It's like, I don't think there's a fixed way to build a championship team. I don't think there's a fixed way to build any team. It's all about finding value where you find value. And I just think like there's value in draft picks. Sure. There's value in cap space. There's value in trading picks for established vets. There's value in all kinds of things. You just have to find the right values where in those areas. And, the Knicks haven't fucking nailed every move they've made, but I think they've on aggregate found more value than they've conceded.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to, there's not a, look, this is, again, like I said, 90% of the time, this is like some of the time it's just a trade based on teams have different evaluation of the value of the prospects, but a lot of times it's just short term versus long term. And ideally, there are enough teams that are short term focused versus enough teams that are long term focused that you can make that work, right? Where a team will take a draft pick that they can use for a good player that the other team can use, and the other team doesn't really need the draft pick, and you don't really need the player, and it works out for both teams. I think it got so skewed towards short-term thinking that the market changed, and I now think it's corrected. So I think that's a big part of it. But I think those rules are still hard grained into our heads to people who have seen things like, the Nets trading a million first-round picks for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce or whatever. The other thing I would say is I think that honestly people just need things to talk about, and the off season's been long. The Knicks don't have a draft pick, and people are just complaining about stuff. But yeah, Josh Hart's gonna be the 4. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, I would like for them to sign a guy like Trent Watford or take a flyer on someone. Maybe that's what they think Isaiah Roby can be. But it's like, people are just shitting on like the 2021 draft, which was a really good draft for the Knicks. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of coherence, and I think the biggest, like, there's just straight up cognitive dissonance, because the same people would tell you The Knicks are trying to do things too quick. The Knicks are trying to not do things the right way and rebuild. By the way, I'm not picking anyone out in particular, but I think this includes a few very high prominent voices in the Knicks space, both podcasters and media members. There are people out of one mouth, they will say, well, the Knicks are not prioritizing the draft. They're trying to do things too quick instead of doing a true rebuild. And those same people will say we should have traded for Donovan Mitchell last summer. That to me is the height of cognitive dissonance. So at that point, you're just talking with people who are trying to talk for the sake of talking. And it's like, are the Knicks moving forward? Like, we can debate.
Have you seen Rush Hour? You've seen Rush Hour, right?
Yes.
When he's like, I like to let people talk who like to talk.
I'm going to kick your ass.
What the hell did you just say?
But yeah, that's kind of what and it's July, and yeah, like it's July, and we're talking about the Knicks. It means if we don't have a super preeminent draft prospect, our best free agent signing is a good player who has pretty projectable. As long as he doesn't get hurt, it's pretty. I think he's gonna 18 to 20 minutes. Hit some threes, defend. Maybe some games he's a really good matchup where he's feeling it and he gets 30 minutes. Maybe other games, quickly or Grimes is feeling it. But it's like there's not a whole lot of mystery this offseason. And I will add this. No, I don't think they just you watch that series. Did you think there was a gap between the team that won the Eastern Conference Finals and the Knicks? They deserve to win. I'm not taking anything from them. The biggest gap did, in my mind, yes, exist in coaching. Do you really think the Knicks were that far behind? And do you think Miami winning was – I don't think Miami winning was that much of a fluke. Even if Giannis was healthy, that team has flaws, man. And they just fired their coach. And they are too Giannis-centric. And the Celtics have flaws. Every team has flaws in the East. I do not – like, if you want me to go by the strict definition of a contender, like they can get out of the East, why not?
Yeah, and – I think this is where I want to read these just because I think it's worth noting. I'm not trying to stir anything up. Anyway, this is Obi Toppin via Zach Braziller of the New York Post. A couple quotes. I'm super excited to be here. Just have fun. They play fast. I think that fits my game. I agree with him. This one, all I can do is what coaches are asking me to do. I didn't get the minutes I wanted. And I want to touch on this because I do think this ties into like the development and young players and all the stuff we've been talking about. Is like, I don't think what was best for Obi Toppin was any longer compatible or congruent with what was best for the Knicks.
Or at least with the front office.
Yeah. Well, I would say there are two pieces to this. Like, one, the Knicks are never going to use, forget the Knicks. Tibbs was never going to he's never going to play super fast. Like, we're not going to have a bunch of fucking balls zipping around and all kinds of fucking actions. Yeah, balls. But like all that stuff is just not going to happen. Agree, disagree. It's the reality of the situation. So if you know this and you know Tibbs is going to be the coach for this next season, kind of had to move Obi. That is what it is. It's sad. It sucks. It is a fuck up on the front office's part. And hopefully they've learned from it. And I think signing DiVincenzo does show they learned from a bit, because I think this second quote, right? All I can do is what coaches are asking me to do. I think DiVincenzo is way more suited to doing the things that Obi was being asked to do offensively anyway. Like, including
rebounding.
Yeah, but especially offensively. If the role is, hey, we want you to space the floor, then yeah, like that's the role, dude. Like, and if that is the role, Obi was never going to do that. And I think, if the Knicks were not good, like if they were off to a 10-13 start last year, if the season had continued going in that direction, then I think the conversation is different, because you're like, well, look, like doing what we do isn't working very well. We're not having great results. We're not a playoff team. We're maybe trying to stumble into the play in here. Maybe we need to try something different. And maybe that something different involves playing fast, giving Obi more minutes in a system and in a role that suits him better. Maybe that makes sense then. But when you have a good season and now you've kind of established a style of play that I think is sustainable in a way that what we did in 2020, 2021 was never going to be sustainable, because of the sustainability, or at least what feels like the sustainability of what we did, it's a lot I don't want to say easier, but a lot more logical to move off of a player like Obi and look for a guy who can play that role more easily. And honestly, you probably could have talked yourself into finding somebody who could play this type of role, like 3-and-D connector type thing, in the draft. But they found a guy obviously in free agency without the draft pick. And I do think he makes us better because we've now committed to this particular style of play. And wrong or right, like within the context of this style of play, I think it's the right choice. And it's not, it actually says less about Obi than it says about where the organization is and how
Do you think they want to play slower?
I mean, I don't even know if that's possible, but I think they just want to, they're playing the way they play. We're going to value.
I think because this is something people have brought up. XJ has been on this pod a couple of times, as mentioned, has had a lot of interesting posts on, the Knicks' strategy clearly last year was win the possession battle, right, with offensive rebounds, limiting turnovers, and get to the foul line a lot, and that was kind of that was kind of it, right? And I think his big question going to the Miami series was, is that something that can win you? Can that go all the way for what it's worth? Against Cleveland, it looked like it could. Against Miami, it didn't. Do you think that's a sustainable strategy, or do you think they're trying? Because I think that that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is they just added a shooter, ball mover, and rebounder who fits that Tibbs mold, but also just came from the team that, from a casual perspective, is the opposite of the Tibbs mold, right? That is the team that often leads the league in turnovers, at least in the playoffs, and is still an extremely effective offense, right? It's a very opposite philosophy in the Warriors. And before that, he was in Milwaukee, which is also very free-flowing and fast-paced offense. My take would be, I'm not sure. Like, I think they're trying to get Tibbs to some kind of a hybrid. I don't know if you believe that, or
I think you'll play a little faster because you're playing more guards, but inherently they're not trying to be an up-tempo team. Like
they're not. But I think that, for example, the guys they've signed, or the guys DiVincenzo averaged 2 steals per game last year. Hart is known more as an event. Actually, Tibbs has deployed him in that on-ball role and guarding Jimmy Butler for whatever reason. But the reason was when Grimes was hurt. Let's hope. But his most effective traits have been generating steals and passing lanes. And the fact that he's a rebounder pays twofold, not just because he can secure rebounds, but because he can start a fast break and even go coast to coast. It seems like they have tried to get more of these up-tempo guys, right? Including going back to Obi. But, it seems like I'm interested because their coach – is the coach antithetical to this? Is the coach willing to adapt? Do they want a hybrid model, right? Can we get the best of both worlds? A Tibbs defense with an up-tempo offense. I'm very curious because I don't see them just going for full Tibbs ball. I think the DiVincenzo acquisition and the Hart acquisition kind of don't necessarily epitomize that to me.
I would say this. I don't think they're really trying to push a hybrid on Tibbs. I think what they're doing is, okay, if this is what Tibbs wants to do, then how can we push margins in our favor? And so last year was like, okay, we're going to be an awesome rebounding team. We're going to get extra possessions. We won't turn the ball over, and that's how we'll win. And they got personnel to achieve those goals. They've drafted towards that personnel in a lot of ways too. Like Emmanuel Quickley is a low turnover player. Jalen Brunson, low turnover player. I think even RJ is relatively low turnover for his usage. Randall's probably like the only high turnover guy.
And he's not really. He averages 2.8 turnovers a game, which for his usage is like, we don't like it, but it's in the grand scheme of things. And Quickley is a very low turnover guy.
Yeah. So I think they've already.
Deuce doesn't do much, but yeah, I think he had like an 8-to-1 assist to turnover ratio his rookie year. Which
he's
enough time for it to be kind of like, okay.
He's a pretty low turnover guy. And then obviously they add Hart, who is a higher turnover guy actually, but he's a great rebounder, obviously. And I think in some ways, like what you're talking about, So he fits into what Tibbs wants to do while giving you a little bit more juice in terms of like Tibbs trusts him. So Tibbs gives him the freedom to get a rebound and then push tempo. Like, so within the margins, within the confines of what Tibbs wants to do,
Yeah.
they're finding guys that can like,
And I think
okay,
DiVincenzo fits that too.
right. And I think that's what they're doing with DiVincenzo, where it's like, okay, Obi didn't fit what you want to do, which is whatever whether we agree, disagree, think he was better than you do, fine. Accept that, move on from Obi. DiVincenzo fits what you want to do. So the trade-off we're making is you don't get a traditional backup four, but we are getting a guy who fits what you want to do. He's a low turnover guy, shoots the ball well, spaces the floor well, solid defender. Like, he's a versatile kind of piece. He's a connector. So he does those things well. And if this is your coach, then and you're gonna keep him for another year, then you have to find the ways to move margins within your control. You have to try to move them in your direction. And I think that's kind of what they're going for with a guy like DiVincenzo, where, okay, we think he can fit into Tibbs' defensive scheme because he's not like this insane gamble guy, right? He's not like Cam, who's going to be lost and then he's going to try to shoot the passing lane and miss and whatever. That creates all kinds of issues for you. But DiVincenzo he does play the passing lanes. Like, he does get deflections. He does get steals. And the Knicks were terrible at getting deflections and steals. They have been terrible at getting deflections.
And like I said, I think the Hart transition, the Hart acquisition prioritized that.
And look,
and what they've done with Quickly, like I think Quickly's evolved this game and he's tried to be more that guy. I think the coaching staff probably had a little bit of a part in that. So.
Well, and then the other thing is you look at the guys they tried, or at least talked about acquiring this offseason. OG Anunoby is like an elite steals and deflections guy. Paul George, an elite steals and deflections guy. Like, these are guys that would fit into what you're trying to do, but you're trying to move these hidden margins in your favor, right? It's kind of like, valuing, like, again, this goes back to like the Moneyball idea of like, okay, you're not trying to replace Johnny fucking Damon, right? Because you're not going to replace Johnny Damon. So you're not going to like replace Obi Toppin. And you're not trying to replace Obi Toppin because, one, your coach never really wanted Obi Toppin that much. And two, like, that's not how you go about necessarily upgrading your team. You're like not going to make a 1-for-1 like-for-like replacement. If you do, it's very, very hard. You're trying to get guys who can give you value in ways that you were lacking. And shooting, deflection, steals, these are the things that like the Knicks were not good at. These are things that DiVincenzo provides, he brings to the table. So I think, again, there are people, I see David Goodman, coach is not willing to adapt to anything. I can't deny that too much. This is from good friend Nemo Petiter. At some point it will not be sustainable, and he's talking about improving things while preserving what he called their wedding to Tibbs. At some point it will not be sustainable, probably after the first round after a big trade has happened. Maybe not.
Maybe Leon Rose needs to go on vacation with Tibbs to Thailand. That's
maybe.
They have never had a honeymoon.
Yeah. But like, I think for right now, that's what you have to do. And I'll also say, like, I don't know that, like, if they have to fire Tibbs after next year for whatever reason, right? And now you want to play fast, I don't think the roster they've created is incapable of playing fast. So that's an interesting.
I think it's better suited for that.
It's definitely possible. So I'm kind of like, I don't know. I wish things had obviously worked out differently with Obi for a lot of reasons, but at some point, like, as Gary Bertier said, you got to cut a man loose. And they cut a man loose, and they brought in somebody else who probably fits in better for what they want to do. And this is the path they've chosen. So I'm excited to watch this team, to be honest. I think DiVincenzo's a good ad. And also, like, the East in general, which, maybe we can talk about this because this is the offseason. We don't need to just talk about the Knicks, because the Knicks actually had a pretty fucking boring offseason, we're going to be real. But, like, I don't think the rest of the East really got better. Like, I don't think the Celtics are better. This is where I've, like, kicked this around for a while. I don't think they're better. We can talk about that more if you want.
The Celtics are better than Knicks? Wow.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think they're better. No. I don't think the Celtics got better from last year. Anyway.
Oh, sorry.
Are they better than the Knicks? regular season, sure, but they also have a lot more injury risk at this
Well,
point.
who won
and
the season series last year?
It's
Just
true.
asking for a friend.
Who went to the conference finals though, Stacy?
And
who
got
won?
beat by the same team.
Who won 3 games against Miami? No, and then I don't think Philly. I mean, they didn't get better. Not I think they just didn't.
They're about to get worse.
They might get worse. They might just get worse even if they keep Harden because he's like getting worse as a player. Yeah.
Maxey might go leave. Right?
Maxey might get better. Maxey should get better. Whatever. I don't think they'll be better. I think they've stagnated. They lost Niang, huge loss.
Yeah,
Actually,
sure.
He's
a Nick killer too, but he's also a really good player.
Yeah, not a huge loss, but it is like it hurts a little bit. Cleveland got better. I don't love the moves they've made though. Like
I think that's where I disagree. Like I'm actually more scared to play them now. Like
I mean they're better.
Like,
but I don't.
We doubled off Levert and of course Okoro, but even Levert, we got away with doubling off him.
Levert's
we just showed a series where we couldn't double off Strus. we haven't been able to double off Niang. Like
he still held Miami in check fairly well, and they had Jimmy Butler and Bam. And look, I think if
they still don't have anyone guard.
Either way, they got better. I don't think their moves were good value though. Well, no, I just don't think they're good value. So like these are their moves. I still think the Knicks still have way more capacity to make moves in season if they need to. The Cavs, this is kind of like this is their team, so whatever. Mobley could get better. I still think like Mobley can get better, and I don't know how much it matters because I don't think he's going to magically. I don't think he'll be a significantly better rebounder next season. And offensively, like he can't shoot, and even if he's not going to become a volume 3-point shooter all of a sudden. Like it's just not going to happen. So they've got real issues there as far as I'm concerned. I think Miami, we don't know. Right now they're worse. They're 100% worse right now. But if they get Dame, obviously they'd be better, but we don't know. Their offseason's not done. I mean, who else is in these? I think Atlanta actually got better. I still think the Knicks are better than them.
Okay, Zach.
Yeah. Yeah, I like their offseason, but it just feels like I like it because they're just going to be playing more of their young guys now. And I just thought last year their rotation sucked for a lot of reasons.
They really get better as a team, though, right?
I mean, I think they'll be better just because I like the younger guys they have more than the guys they were playing. I like the Pacers got better. I don't think they'll be better than the Knicks. The Magic will be better. I don't think they'll be better than the Knicks. Like the teams though at the top of the East, I don't really see which one got a lot better. I mean, the top 4 seeds: Boston, Philly, Cleveland, and why am I blanking?
Boston, Philly, Cleveland.
Wow.
Miami. No, not Miami.
Miami was the 6th. This is
Milwaukee.
Terrible. Milwaukee's better than us, but like they didn't do anything to get better.
They're better than us because of one player. And
right. But that's all I'm talking about. I'm not saying take you out of
are you like I'm not I don't know, maybe this is overconfidence, but like I'm not scared. By the way, Brook Lopez is no spring chicken. That decline is going to whenever that happens, that decline is gonna have a big effect on them. They have Giannis, okay, and like they have shooters to space this out. We've played them like there's no one who I'm like the Knicks have like I've said this on this pod before. When the Knicks were the 2 seed even when it looked like they would beat Indiana, and the Knicks had beat the Heat 3-1 that year. You know, you can say hindsight is 2020, whatever. Like, I never felt they were better than the Heat, or I never felt they had a good chance against LeBron and Wade. If that team was healthy, did you feel like they had a really good chance against that LeBron Wade team? If it's yes, then maybe I was just being a hater.
In 2013, I thought they had a chance, but also like the playoffs were just the Knicks offense went to complete shit. So no,
I feel like way more optimistic about the Knicks beating anyone. Honestly, the only team I am scared of is Denver. That's like scared of. Like, should we be favored against Milwaukee? No.
But my point is,
but can we contend with these? Isn't that the definition? Can we contend with any of those teams in the East? Absolutely. And there's some I would outright still favor us against Cleveland. Philly it's Schrodinger's Sixers, so I'm not going to touch that. But like we've played them tough. Embiid it's a very tough case for us always, and if Harden is playing well
Well,
too, it's
Randall
tough.
and Embiid could cancel each other out with like their turnovers in the playoffs. So
I hope that was Tyrese just possessed your soul for a second. I think that's what happened.
I think
no,
Embiid's very overrated though. Whatever.
He's not Julius Randle. But they can beat them in a 7 games. Like, is it like the Heat beat Milwaukee? The Heat did not have a better team than the Knicks. This is going to sound like excuses. I'm not saying it as excuses. I'm saying it as a fact that if they could beat that Bucks team, the Knicks could beat that Bucks team. Should they be trying to get better? Yes. Would it make things a lot easier if they got a Paul George? Absolutely. But are they a contender now? Yeah, because I think how people define that in the gray area and like, do you have a chance, is much lower than people realize. You know, the Heat made the fucking finals. You know, like, what does contender mean anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of there, but I still think if Giannis's back doesn't break and if he's healthy, I just don't think the Knicks can beat them, which is fine. That's the one team that I think they can't beat in the East in a scenario. Then that's fine. I think they can beat Boston. Boston would be favorites, but I think the Knicks could beat them. Philly, like you talked about, but yeah, like the point is like I just feel like there are people that are like, well, we didn't do enough this offseason, and I'm not sure like what that. I guess I don't know what that means. Like, what does it mean that we didn't do enough?
It's the same people who are like, you didn't trade for Paul George, you should have gone all in. But it's also like, why trade a first round picks build the right way? It's like, well, which one do you want?
Yeah, I don't know. So I think the Knicks are still in a pretty okay position, or pretty good position actually, and. Yeah, the Miami's offseason, I don't know what to make of it, because if they land Dame, then maybe it's great. But as things stand, like, it's not good. And you know,
can we talk about, like, we've talked about it last time. I mean, I have no issue with Dame wanting out. Wanting out to be like, it's one thing if you're like, you know, you tell your parents or something, or you know, you're like a 16-year-old kid, I want you to sell my car. It's one thing if you say, well, I want you to sell it for whatever you can get. It's another thing for you to say, why don't you sell it to that person for $200, right? And like way below its value. Like, it's like, no, right? Like it's, I think the whole problem is Dame asking to go to Miami where they have absolute shit prospects, unless you ask one of their, you know, water carriers at ESPN or the assholes on Twitter. Like they have not, like, nobody gives a fuck about Tyler Hero. Like, first of all, I think this is some vindication we've gotten here, right? We've been saying for 3 years nobody gives a fuck about Tyler Hero. Now we finally see it, and like, why would Portland ever? If Dame threatened me with a retirement, if I'm, you know, the GM of Portland, Dame threatens me, I'm just gonna not come play until you trade me to Miami. I'm like, I would rather do that than trade you to fucking Miami for Tyler Hero and like shitty picks that they don't even have. So like, is there like, but I wouldn't even, and I wouldn't do that for 50 cents on the dollar either. I would say like, I want 80 cents on the dollar minimum. And it's just hilarious. But there's so many people who think like, oh, Dame's just gonna get sent to Miami for cheap, and it's like, I mean, is there precedent for that? Has any team really gotten screwed in these kind? I feel like every time there's a star trade, people are like, oh, that they got screwed. And go back to that Boogie trade, right? Boogie was traded for fair value. Eventually, like, San Antonio did well with DeRozan, and they got first, and Jakob Portl, who I think they turned into another first. Like, these are, like, nobody gets screwed like that, but people are just assuming that Dame's going to go to Miami for like a Cuban sandwich and Tyler Hero. Like, no.
Yeah, the Dame thing is stupid. I just don't. The way the media covers it is so interesting to me. And Larry Israel actually brought up this point on Twitter, but like the way they covered this versus, or they have covered this so far versus how they covered like the Mitchell talks with the Knicks, where it was like, oh well, like the Knicks assets aren't actually that good, and fucking if they should have to trade everything for Donovan Mitchell. And it's like, well, actually, Miami, if you think about Nikola Jovic and Jaime Jaquez, they're actually giving up like 4 first-round picks. It's like,
Jaime Jaquez had a good summer league game.
Yeah.
He's basically like better than, you know. He's worth more than like Tyrese Maxey or whatever.
Yeah, it's they're basically giving up 4 first round. Now there's this new thing I've been hearing on like various pods. It's like, actually, I think the Miami package is. I think people are sleeping on it. I'm like, really? Yeah, are people really fucking sleeping on it? Maybe it seems the entire NBA has been sleeping on that trade package. Because last summer when they were offering that for Donovan Mitchell, it was like, oh well, it's not a very good package. Now all of a sudden, because like they're number one on Dame's list, it's a great package. They owe it to Dame. What do they fucking owe Dame, man? They don't owe Dame anything. I'm sorry. Like this whole they owe Dame thing, they don't owe Dame shit. And I'll tell you why. Because Damian Lillard,
a lot of money.
Well, Damian Lillard, and you can tell me, and I agree with this. I buy it. Damian Lillard has made them more money than he's taken out. I agree with that. Like that's just how the fucking league works. Like he will never see the full financial benefit of the money he drives into that to that market. Like he fills the fucking stadium every night. He sells jerseys. He sells all these things. The stars in the NBA are almost all underpaid. Like the true superstars in the NBA are underpaid, relative to the amount of money that and revenue that they generate. There's no question about that. But that's the fucking market. Like that is the existing state of play. And that is the reality of it. All I know is that at every single point when it was contract time, the Portland Trailblazers paid him the maximum amount of money down to the fucking cent that they could. Every single time they paid him. Okay. And 2 years ago, he could have not signed last year, he could have not signed the 2-year, $122 million extension. Okay. That now locks him under a contract through 2026, 2027. If he did that, now the leverage of I only want to go to Miami means a lot more because he'd only have 2 years left on his contract. There's a lot more leverage from that to be had. And it carries a little bit more weight when you're like, look, I just want to win. I want to compete now. And it carries a little more weight if you didn't lock in a 2-year, $122 million extension last year. And now it just comes across like, okay, so you just wanted to lock in the money, which is your prerogative. And now that you've locked in the money, now you're trying to get to the place that you really want to go to. And again, that's his prerogative. I don't hate Dame for that. I don't think he can do whatever the fuck he wants to try to get to Miami. If his agent wants to go out there and fucking tell every team, don't trade for Dame, don't do this, that's fine. That's his prerogative. That's business. That's business. Trying to get done what you want to get done to benefit yourself, that's business. So good for him. But guess what the other part of business is? Contracts mean shit. And Portland has to do what's best for fucking Portland. Not what's best for Damian Lillard, not what's best for his legacy, not what he wants, not any of that shit. They've got to do what's best for Portland because Joe Cronin, he's not going to get to keep his job because he made Damian Lillard happy. Like, that's not how he's going to keep his fucking job. I'm telling you that right now. If he makes a trade for fucking, whatever dog shit assets the Heat can cobble together in Tyler Herro's contract, like, in a year from now, he's going to get fucking fired because their owner is going to be like, this is what, like, fucking Miami's winning 60 games in the East. They look like they're about to go to the fucking finals again. Like, you could put a pile of shit around Scoot and Shaedon Sharpe, a guard that makes no sense for us. The trade makes no sense for them. So he shouldn't do that trade just because that's what Dame wants. And I gotta say, like, if there's any NBA teams scared off of, what if Dame is Dame not going to play basketball for 4 years? Yeah, he's going to sit for 4 fucking years and he's going to throw away the money that he's owed in his contract and not show up.
$200 million.
Yeah, he's just gonna not show up. No, I call bullshit. Okay, fine. I call bullshit. And you know what? If I'm Joe Cronin, if these threats that they're making, that Aaron Goodwin, Damian Lillard's agent, is making, if that is really depressing his non-Miami market, and those teams are just scared off of offering what they might offer if the signals they were getting were a little nicer, I would just be like, okay, we're just gonna bring you back. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, if he wants to retire, and not fine, dude.
Hey, look, we haven't found a trade that makes sense for us in terms of value. We still love you. You can come back, and we'll just play it out again because we're not trading you for pennies on the dollar. And like this, I just can't believe the amount of people I've heard all of a sudden like, look, you can tell them like, those Heat picks could be really good. That's great. They could be really good. I agree. They could be fucking great. They're also going to be fucking 5 years from now and 7 years from now. That's what I'm trading Damian Lillard for today. Like, I'm not saying everything you get has to return immediate value. You got to get something. And that something can't be Tyler Hero because even if you think Tyler Hero is a good player, he makes no sense for them. They have Anthony Simons. They already had Anthony Simons. They drafted Scoot Henderson. They have Shaden Sharp. How does Tyler Hero make any sense for them? And if you're another team, I swear to God, if some fucking team comes in and offers like 2 firsts for Tyler Hero, I might fucking lose it. It's like, are you guys trying? Like, do you just want the Heat to fucking be good? Is that it? Like, you just want them to get because Damian Lillard is like the perfect guard for them. Like, if you have Butler and you have Bam and you're like, we need a point guard, the only other point guard that is like better for them and for what they need because of their lack of shot creation and off the dribble shooting and all that stuff is Steph Curry. And if you're not going to get Steph Curry, getting dime store Steph is not a bad deal.
What about Emmanuel Quickly?
He would never go play for that heathen franchise. That fucking, he Pat Riley sold his soul to the devil. Emmanuel Quickly is a man of God. Like no, but the hero thing. If I'm any other team, another thing is people are like, oh well, maybe they can get assets for Hero. If I'm another team, I'm like, you can't make this trade without Hero, right? Like you can't actually make this trade. Portland will not take the trade with Hero, so you need to move Hero to me. And you want me to give you assets because I'm doing you a solid? Get the fuck out of here. Like, I'll take Hero. That's like, if you need me to take the Hero contract, I'll take the Hero contract. But I'm not giving you anything for it. Like, you can have like fucking a top 55 protected second and the rights to fucking
DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah. Fucking Sarunas something fucking that we drafted 15 years ago never came over. Like, that's what you can have. That's what you can have for Hero. So the Heat thing is stupid, and like I think if I were a team, like the 4 years on his contract makes it interesting, especially because he did have his like at least individually his best season of his career last season. Like I don't know, man. If I'm a team like Utah, I'd think about it. I'm sitting on all these fucking picks. I've got a shit ton of young guys, probably too many young guys now in the backcourt and all around.
Well, there's Utah, there's New Orleans.
New Orleans trading CJ back to Portland.
I mean, our friend Fear the Brown has mentioned it, right? So
that would be really funny. But
well, I mean, Dame with Zion would be formidable
for the 6 minutes a year they played together.
Yeah, and not for opposing offenses, but I mean, I think there's multiple. Utah's one. I don't know that I actually think Damian Lillard and Danny Ainge would clash like oil and water. But I mean, there's could you do a Kyrie for Dame trade? Right? Probably not. Probably not going to work out for Portland. There's other options. Like, why would you could send him to Oklahoma City? Like, I actually think a Dame and an SGA backcourt would be interesting. You could send him to a place like Detroit. They have picks. Would you do like Ivy? Would you rather have Jaden Ivey or Tyler Hero as a centerpiece of a deal? Ivy. Yeah, right. You could send Ivy.
Actually, I don't know. Ivy didn't play well in summer league yesterday, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, Wembanyama apparently is the next Michael Olowokandi because he didn't play that well. So
the candy man.
But Detroit could be why would you? Or if not Ivy, Cade, right? I would send Cade and they send out Sadiq. They have Wiseman and Duren. If they believe in Wiseman, maybe you make Duren available, right? There's so many teams with better packages to offer than mine. And at that point, at the point that the Blazers are at, Tyler Hero's younger than James Harden. Why not look at sending to Philly, right? Especially Philly has said they're not going to trade Maxey. Let's see. I would push them on that, right? And to your point earlier, Maxey doesn't make as much sense.
The Philly Maxey thing is bullshit, by the way. Like, if you're not going to trade him, okay, if you're definitely not trading him, why do you need to come out like as soon as free agency started, or even before free agency started, and be like, we were not going to extend Tyrese Maxey?
It almost sounds like there's an implied wink there, right?
Yeah.
So like, like we want to trade him, just make it worth our while, right?
Or at least I don't think they want to. I think they're like for a Dame or like, if you get a superstar, obviously it's worth it.
Yeah. So I mean, I think they could trade him to literally 29. Do the Heat have the worst offer for Dame? Like the Knicks would obviously have a better offer.
Well, would you rather have like Tobias Harris's expiring contract and
I would want
Maxey and their 2029 first for Dame than that? I think the Heat can do 2028, 2020, 30 or 2030, 2020, 30, 2030 first, and a 2029 pick swap plus Hero and whatever.
It's still one pick and a swap.
Two picks and a swap.
Yeah, the Sixers can match that.
They can do one pick. Sixers can do one pick.
They cannot trade more than one first round pick.
They can't trade more than one first round.
I'd still rather have Maxey.
Yeah, I think I would rather have Maxey. But I think the more interesting thing for me is like if the Sixers can get if they can get a Harden deal done and get those two firsts from the Clippers, which are in 2028 and 2030, hilariously, then they can throw 3 firsts into the mix and Maxey potentially, plus reroute, whatever they got from the Clippers and in terms of players, like let's say fucking Terrence Mann, who I like a lot, and some other fucking expiring contract. Like there's a world where that deal is also better. So I don't know. I just, to me, it's not even about that. Like, I mean, the trade I would make is like if I'm Boston, I'd be offering Jaylen Brown straight up for Dame. I would do that in a heartbeat. But Boston, I don't think they're going to do that. I'm pretty sure they're going to just give Jaylen Brown the supermax.
Do you think the teams are being like whatever we think? In your gut, do you think teams are being scared off by the Dame agent stuff?
No. I think this happened last offseason with the Donovan Mitchell thing. And this is why I'm like extremely happy the Knicks are not involved in this. By the way, I just got to say, John Hollinger is such a fucking loser. He was on Lowe's pod last week and he was like, so Zach, like they're talking about, they were going through like every team's Dame trade package or whatever. And they were like, got to the Knicks and Hollinger's like, I mean, come on. I mean, the Knicks have been saving up for a star player. Like, why not? And he's like, Zach, do you think is it really just like that you can't play him? Like, is it just having him and Brunson together doesn't make sense? And Lowe paused for like 5 seconds. And he's like, yeah, I think that's it. That's fuck, you got it. But like I don't think teams are scared off. I just think this is, it's fucking July. It's really no rush. Like
it's also a 33-year-old player who does rely on athleticism in addition to incredible shot making. But yeah, that's the thing. He's 33, and
it also behooves the Blazers. Like if you look at, I think
behooves the Blazers is a nice little alliteration there.
Yes, if you take, I mean, if you think Danny Ainge handled the Donovan Mitchell thing perfectly, and like because he waited so long, he got a better return from a team that eventually just kind of emerged in Cleveland than he was ever going to get from the Knicks, like then you might try to recreate that yourself, right? Like if you think some team is going to keep staring at this fucking thing the entire offseason, and at some point they're going to be like, fuck it. Like he will take the risk. Like they'll just fucking do it. I think it's the right thing to do. There's no reason to rush it. Take your time. And this is a situation where it's not like you need to hide that you're canvassing the league for trade offers, right? You can be like very open about it because Dame is the one that is asked out. So you can just go around the league, be like, yeah, so fucking tell us what you'd give up for Dame. Call up every single team if you want and see what their offers are. Like they can take their time. There's no rush in this. There's only two, like the only person that's in a rush is Damian Lillard and the Heat. The Blazers are chilling, bro. The Blazers got Scoot. They got Shaden Sharp. They're happy to suck next year because then they'll keep their fucking pick again. Like they're fine. They're it doesn't materially change anything for them if they keep Lillard or don't. Like it doesn't really matter to them. It matters more to a team acquiring him, right? Like if you acquire Dame, You want to get him in before the season starts because you want to have him for the fucking season. And I think that's kind of like what happened with the Donovan Mitchell thing, right? He got traded on what was it, Labor Day weekend, basically. And it's like because ultimately you're approaching the season and there's a team was like in that case, Cleveland was like, fuck it, like let's do it. But if we're gonna do it, we want to get it done now because we want to have this guy for the full fucking season. We want to have him in training camp. I think some team potentially will sit there for the rest of July, August, watch The Sandlot a few times, and maybe get inspired by Benny the Jet Rodriguez, and they will make a call and they will pull the trigger on a Dame deal. But like, that's what I think will happen. I just find it very hard to believe that the best offer they're going to be able to get is Hero and 2 firsts and a pick swap. Like, I just think some team can.
And that's like orders. It's not even like it'd be close and they want to do him a solid. That'd be one thing. Like you're talking about like orders of magnitude better offers.
You're not even getting expiring salary in this fucking Heat deal. You've got the Hero contract for the next 4 years. Like at least if you just told me if the trade was like Lowry and Caleb Martin and expiring salary to make that match, I would be a lot more interested in that than I am in the Hero part of it. But this is the funny part. Miami doesn't want Hero because they know Hero and Lillard together is not going to be tenable. And so they want to keep Lowry, who may actually probably would be fucking awesome with Damian Lillard. I get that. But yeah, I mean, and the other, like, if I was Portland too, another part of it would be like, I'd be trying to fucking dump Nurkic in any of these situations. Like, all right, you want Dame? That's great. You got to take Nurkic. That's like the cost of doing business here. You're going to have to take Nurkic. On top of giving me everything I want for Dame, you're going to have to take the Nurkic deal. So that's a lot of money. Dame, I think, is at like 45 right now, and Nurkic is at something like 16 or 17. So that's a lot of money. So, that's it. It again makes sense for them to take their time and go around the league and see if they can't create a little bidding war. But there are teams that I think should be in for Dame. Like I think a team like Orlando should seriously consider it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'd be, especially if they can keep Franz and Paulo. That's pretty fun core to go into next season.
I just, that they're very uniquely.
If I was Portland, I would demand one of Franz or Paulo. But
yeah, but I think there's a middle ground there, right? Like for example, does Portland love Anthony Black? I have no idea if they do or not. By the way, I'm just saying maybe they love Anthony Black. Okay, we want Anthony Black. Like, we won't give you Paolo or Franz, but we'll give you Anthony Black. Who do they take 11th?
The Magic?
Yeah. It wasn't Anthony Black. Anthony Black was the 6th pick. I know that. I don't remember who they took at 11th. Maybe they love the guy they took at 11. It's like, all right, yeah, give us him.
Jet Howard. Wow. Okay. We both failed on that. Huh?
Yeah. But would you, if you're Orlando, you might think Anthony Black is great, but are you really going to be like, okay, no, we can't do this trade because Anthony Black, like if we get to keep Paolo and Franz, I don't know. I think it's seriously worth considering though, because if Paolo and Franz are as good as I would assume they think they are, then you get Dame and all of a sudden it's like, okay, we can make some noise in the East. We're actually not that far off even.
And they'd still have probably a surplus of picks and assets, right? Like,
yeah, they would have
to sell the farm. They have a surplus of picks.
And they could probably make some trades to replenish some of that stuff, right? Like, I don't think Cole Anthony is amazing, but you could probably get like a late first from a team for him at the deadline or something, right? Like a team that's a contender that needs guard help, especially because you're going to get them restricted rights. Like, and I think Cole's developed into like a pretty nice little player.
So he's not even a bad defender. Like for that archetype, he's a pretty good defender.
No, he competes. Like I think he's a good little player, but yeah, like even if I was honestly the team that I think should trade for Dame, like if I were fucking, I'll tell you, if you were the Raptors, okay, and let's say Portland calls you up and they're like, all right, you give us Scotty Barnes, you can, and just give us whatever bullshit expiring money you want, but you can keep everybody else. You get to keep Siakam, you can keep Pirtle. We don't want any of your we just give us Scotty Barnes, and you keep all your picks. And you keep OG, like, we just want Scotty Barnes and whatever fucking bullshit money you can throw at us. So you can give us Gary Trent Jr. back.
I would rather do the Miami trade. I'd rather have picks than that.
No. But I'm saying if you are Toronto, because to me, I don't know what the hell Scotty Barnes' value is, but I do suspect there are teams out there that are still like extremely high on him. And I do wonder if that's a guy you sell high on. And then I also wonder, like, is Dame, Pascal, OG, Pirtle, I'm not sure who your two guard is, whatever. Like, is that a contender in the East? It might be. It might be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Portland would. I don't think Toronto should say no, but I definitely think.
I think Toronto would say no. That's the funniest part.
Masai's a maniac then.
Masai, he always knows. I mean, when you hold Dame out, you create like more teams because you're not doing anything in fucking July, right? Like the free agent thing lasts the first week basically, and then it's kind of like, oh, like who's gonna sign Christian Wood? Like where's Kelly Oubre gonna land? You're not like these are not fucking whales that you're waiting for after that point. So if you're a decision maker in the front office, you have a lot of time to just be like, well, I guess Dame is out there. What if we could get Dame? How would Dame make sense here? Would we be a contender? And like, you might get a couple teams that think that change their kind of like viewpoint. They're like, oh, well, you know what? Maybe shit. If Dame is really out there and available, we get him. We don't really buy his bullshit. He's not going to show up. Might be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think literally every other team in the league would probably. I mean, even the Knicks could say yes. Like, if the price is right, I wouldn't hate a Dame Brunson pairing, especially if we had good defenders around them. Like if it was a lineup of Dame, Brunson, Mitch, Grimes, and like Hart, that lineup could defend, you know. So it just adds more to the fact that like there's no reason Portland should trade him to Miami like at all.
Yeah, I'm definitely with that. I'm actually curious. We can close with this because they are in our division, and I do think they've had a interesting off season. Actually, and Zach and I talked about this on Strickland Roll, so I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Like, I'm sure we've talked about like team's identity and forging one and finding one and leaning into one. We talked about it a little bit early on this pod too. But I find the Celtics interesting because they really not punted, but they like moved away from a lot of stuff this offseason that I think was like a core part of their identity. And, you know, Grant Williams isn't the greatest player in the world, but I think he graded out as like one of the 10 most versatile defensive players in the league, according to B-Ball Index. So like, that means you guarded like the power forward and the center and the point guard and the wing. Like you guarded those positions at a very variable rate. So he's a very flexible defensive piece. Shot 40% from three for the last 2-3 years. And then obviously you trade Smart, who for better or worse was like the heart and soul of your team. You're not like both those guys fit into like your kind of switch all the time, switch everything type of defensive scheme, which was super effective for them, by the way. Like, I know their defense didn't feel as good this past season, but they were second in defensive rating. They were amazing the year before. They were first, and then they obviously they got to the finals. You bring in Kristaps offensively. I get it. Stretches the floor, opens it up. Not really a super physical guy. They've lost a lot of physicality now on this team. I think they've lost a lot of like. I mean, I don't want to. Have you ever watched Mad Men?
Yeah.
You know when Don steals the he's like drunk and he steals the guy's time life pitch, right? He doesn't remember. So I think Bontemps said this, so I don't want to. So I'm gonna cite him, so I don't get accused of stealing. It feels like they've lost like personality on this team. Like this team seems very bland and blah, and it's like, you know, I don't know who the leader is. I don't know who's vocal, and I don't know that there's the value of that is very. It's unknown. I don't know if that means something. I don't know if it means everything. It can mean nothing. It could be something in between. But I'm very curious about this team now because, like, offensively, you have to think. I mean, Porzingis is the best talent of those three players for sure. Porzingis, Smart, Grant Williams. He's also an injury risk. Malcolm Brogdon's an injury risk. Al Horford's an injury risk because he's just fucking old. And Robert Williams an injury risk. They've lost depth, and they basically just
the
have,
East Coast Clippers.
Yeah, it's weird though. It's like they have like 7 guys now, right? It's Brogdon, Derek White, Tatum Brown, Porzingis, Horford, Robert Williams, and I would say it's not clear that like
What happened to did Peyton Pritchard?
oh
get
Pritchard's
traded?
there, but he wasn't in the rotation. He should. You're right. He should get minutes again this year. But like we also know Missoula didn't like playing Horford with Robert Williams that much. They did not lean into that as much as they did the year before. Well, again, and this is kind of like goes back to a Tibbs thing, right? Like right or wrong, like that's your head coach. That's kind of what he showed last year. Is he going to feel better about playing Horford with Porzingis? I don't know. And if he doesn't, then like, do you just have 3 centers that don't really play together well or like play together much? Does he like Porzingis at the 4? Is Porzingis good at the 4? Like he was better last year as a 5. He's been better at the 5, I think, for a little while now. So they're just a very like the talent is definitely there, but they feel very weird to me, and I don't know what to make of them. And I'm down on them relative to. I think if they just run it back, I still would have been like, I'm not sure you're gonna win a championship because whatever, but like I still think you're gonna win a shit ton of regular season games and win like 55 plus and be really good.
Yeah, I think. So you're saying if they get DeRozan?
No, I just don't even know what they're. I just don't know what they're doing. Like I know what they're doing. I know what they've done, but it feels like this roster is just strange to me, and I kind of don't know what to make of it because I feel like a lot of people really like the Porzingis addition, and I get it because I was advocating to get Porzingis on the Knicks, but like now I feel differently about it because I'm like I don't love losing Smart and Grant Williams, and now your rotation is 7 guys, and 4 of them I'm not sure we can depend on for like 70 games a year.
I mean, so this is a franchise that has prided itself on development, and so they might have. I don't know who's in the pipeline exactly.
They drafted was it Kobe? Is it Kobe Walsh? Jordan Walsh? I don't know.
Jordan Walsh, who looked good in summer league. Shooting was the big question mark for him, and he had a pretty good. Debut shooting the ball in summer league. I don't know that they would want to go from game 1 with him. But you know, they might have, you know, there's guys, you know, Sam Hauser has gotten minutes. People are high on O'Shea Brissett, for better or for worse. That could be propaganda. You know, maybe they make a trade at some point. I think the reality of it is this: they were good enough to make the finals last year. And if they made the finals, I do think they would have given Denver a contest, probably a better contest than Miami did. You know, I'm very curious, but they're not at a pick. They're not at a pick disadvantage.
No, they're not.
They have the ability to get someone that's probably what they're benefiting. They're depending on, you know, someone from one of these teams that's going for it. But I think they're an interesting candidate for Dame for sure.
Yeah, I know that they're incomplete, I guess is what you want to say. But like, I don't know. That stuff is always weird. Like, obviously they didn't trade. You know, they got that Golden State first from Memphis. They kind of used the 25th pick this year to start racking up second round picks. They got 2 second rounders in this Grant Williams trade, which, by the way, like if they were just willing to take the Bullock salary, that they could have gotten the 2030 Mavericks pick swap, unprotected pick swap that instead the Spurs got, which would have been probably a way better asset, but clearly they wanted to.
You're betting on Luka's decline, or you think he's not going to be there?
I think he's not going to be there. He's going to the Magic Johnson meme. I'm not going to be there anymore. And like, I don't know. To me, it's just a drastic change in their identity that I don't know how I feel about it. Like, they had a deep team, right? And now it feels like they're not deep at all. And then you had like a super drive and kick heavy team. You were guard heavy in a lot of ways. And now you seem like very front court oriented. And I still don't love like Porzingis obviously opens up the floor for you, but your endgame offense still feels like it's going to be a fucking disaster.
Well, I mean, I think without a rim protector, Tatum should be more effective. So should Brown, right? So
yeah,
there's not going to be anyone in the paint. If you can go 5 out with those guys,
I mean,
all
they
the
were
time.
playing 5 out anyway. I take the point. Obviously, Porzingis has more gravity than like Al Horford, right? For sure. But I still think half the problem is like they didn't have guys that could get them into offense well, and because of that, like you're running most of your offense through Tatum and Brown, anyways. That's who you're almost exclusively going to be running the offense through now, because Smart, again, for better
But you
or
don't
worse.
want to be running it through Smart and Grant.
No, you don't. But like Smart could he did like point guard things, right? I'm not saying he did them all the times, and Lord knows I'm not the biggest Marcus Smart fan. But now it's like, okay, you've got Derek White, who I like a lot, but is Derek White like he's going to be this great endgame initiator? Brogdon?
Well, they didn't have one on the roster, but I mean, I think they need to find one.
They have to find one, and that's kind of why I just like the Dame idea.
But these guys usually are, So Dame. I mean, I think beyond that, I think if you can pair Dame with, if you have a guy like Jason Tatum, and you have an opportunity to pair him with a guy like Damian Lillard, I think the conversation stops there. It's like, yes, I think the points you made add to that, but I'm also not worried about them because there will be point guards, backup point guards available. Like if they want to trade for Okas Jokubaitis, they probably could.
Right, but to me, it's like you've already done like whatever we think of Marcus Smart. I think it's safe to say though, like Marcus Smart is a solid point guard. I'm not saying great. He's a solid starting point guard.
But not for the offensive side of the ball, right? Like,
no,
he's not really a guy that
right. But
the wheels.
But is that's kind of that's actually that even makes the point, like, because the guys that they need, the guy that you need to get is not. He's not even like a Malcolm Brogdon good offensive player type. He's not a Derek White good player type. He's not a Marcus Smart good player type, because they've had these end game offensive fucking issues for years now with like these dudes. And look, I know they tried their hand with Kyrie, and look, Kyrie's just that's its own thing. That is its own fucking thing. Kemba was cooked. Like he was done by the time he got to Boston, right? Especially by the end of that first season, he was cooked. To me, like they went in the other direction, which worked to a large degree, not all the way, but they were like, fuck it, let's just give the ball to Smart, and then we're actually just going to run most of our offense through Tatum and Brown anyway. Let's see how this goes. We're going to lean into this defensive identity where we switch everything, and it worked very well, obviously. But like, I think ultimately they still need that star point guard or a star point guard, and it's not going to be like get Tyus Jones in the door and we're fine, or like get, Tyus Jones is kind of like the perfect analog to like, oh, we just need like a table setter. Like, no, I think you need more than like a good table setter. I think you need like a real star guard, because what it tells me is that if you've changed your coach so many times, Stevens to Udoka to Missoula now, and you've changed your point guard so many times, right? They had Isaiah Thomas. They had Kyrie Irving. They had Kemba Walker. They had Marcus Smart now. Now they're going to have probably Derek White. Like, you've changed your point guard so many times and your coach so many times. There's one thing that's staying the same, is that you're running all your offense through Tatum and Brown. And those guys, and like, I know that Horford he doesn't have the gravity Porzingis does, but they've played with like pretty spread floors for a while now too. And your endgame offense has struggled in all these scenarios. So to me, the issue is I don't think Tatum and Brown are really good wings. Tatum is better. Brown is still very good. They're not LeBron and Wade. They're not Jordan and Pippen. That's fucking okay. Like it's fine. Guess what? The Clippers figured that out too. Oh, Kawhi and Paul George might not be those guys even when they're healthy. Like, we might need to keep trying to get point guards. They've had the same issue, right? How many point guards the fucking Clippers gone through? Like, I think they need a star point guard, and their best vehicle to get a star point guard is probably Jaylen Brown. And that's a big risk, but as good as Jaylen Brown is, I don't think he'll ever be as good as Damian Lillard was last year. I don't think he'll ever be as good as Damian Lillard has been at his best. And I don't think he has a chance to complement Jason Tatum offensively in the way that a guy like Damian Lillard could.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can do that, Jaylen Brown and first for
Would you even need to do first?
What?
Would you even need to do first though?
I think you'd have to
Like
do A first.
okay, let's say Jaylen Brown first, and the only kind of like let's say problem or the only concern, right, is he's a free agent next summer, so Portland would need to feel like okay, he'll stay. We'll keep he'll stay if we trade for him. That's the concern. But I think there's ways around that, right? Can you trade Jaylen Brown to a market who'll give you the picks, and then you can now reroute those.
Or
to
can you do a 3-team trade, right? With Jaylen Brown as the centerpiece, but if you send him to LA and then LA sends I don't know, Austin Reeves and
whatever. I mean, whoever the third team is, if the third team can send shit that makes Portland okay with trading you Dame plus whatever you need to add, is that worth it? I think it is because
100% worth it.
Tatum is
the question again. The only reason Boston wouldn't do that is if they really take the Dame threat credibly.
Yeah, the thing is, Tatum is ready to win now, and I know Brown is also ready to win now, right? But if Tatum is the franchise player, then what he needs should be a priority over viewing him and Jaylen Brown as a duo. I think they're different levels. Jason Tatum is a priority. He is the franchise player. So I will value getting a guy that might necessitate that I trade Jaylen Brown if I also think that guy gives me a higher ceiling and complements Tatum. And man, I don't even especially with Porzingis too. I don't even know what the hell you would do with that team, how you defend them, because you've got 2-3 level scorers really in Dame and Tatum. Then you've got a big who just opens up the floor for them in so many different ways. That's an offense that would be crazy dynamic. And I know Dame hasn't been the best playoff guy in his career, but I feel like this would give him a better chance than he's really ever had.
Yeah, it's tough to disagree with any of that. And I think it would probably make them favorites in the East if they made that trade. So here's hoping they don't.
Yeah, I'm here's hoping they don't. And it would actually be really interesting to see if they did make that trade, they got to the finals playing Denver or something, because that would be just a very interesting matchup for a lot of reasons.
Dame against Murray and Jokic and all them.
Yeah, well, we'd finally be able to settle the Porzingis versus Jokic debate.
Oh yeah, I remember when he gave the Knicks 41, and I was like, Porzingis is still getting weight on.
Yeah, you guys, you don't really.
It's a bad matchup, guys.
Yeah, you don't really, you don't understand Porzingis when he's not even scoring. The way he creates space for you is so good.
I will say the next year I went back to the Garden, I saw Porzingis against Jokic, and Porzingis won that battle.
Yeah, that was a good game.
40. Yeah, or he hit close to 40. And
Murray went off in the second half in that game.
Yeah, the Knicks won. So
yeah,
that was we can clown it now, and Jokic is obviously the much better player. There was a time when they were Porzingis was that level of prospect. So. I mean, I do think you'd have had a better career if he didn't get injured.
I mean, if he actually all the things I do believe or I did believe about him, they're wrong in the sense of if the context of my belief is this is why he's better than Nikola Jokic, I was wrong. But in the context of this is why I think Porzingis could be really good is because there is he actually does have value just by existing on the court. Because you talk about you actually have to pull a center out of the paint with him. He actually makes you honor the 3-point shot. He can score.
He can just walk into a transition 3.
And he can, he has all the, you can run those quick hitters with him that you can run for wings, I don't know. I didn't watch Washington enough to know that, to feel comfortable saying that he showed that last year. But
I think the most he showed that was Dallas. He did that a lot in Dallas. They used him on the short roll. Honestly, those kind of opportunities, using him like a movement shooter was what was us most frustrated they didn't do with him in New York, especially when they did put smaller defenders on him. But I think the biggest thing that turned him from the kind of prospect he was I think he was underrated as a defender. People were like, oh, Anthony Tolliver scored 20 points, but they would often forget how much the Knicks asked Porzingis to do on defense. And it was because of his mobility. And that was the biggest difference to me in Dallas. His impact as a defender really went down. I saw a lot of that come back in Washington.
Yeah, he graded out a lot better last year.
Yeah, and so if he's a 20 and 8 guy on efficient numbers with that kind of defense, that's maybe that's the kind of player we should be talking about all along. But that was really always the value proposition. I think, he had that stretch at the beginning of his third year where he was the Knicks engine and he was averaging 30, and that was probably always just unsustainable because, it's unrealistic to ask him to create a shot in that way. But as a movement guy, as a play finisher and a defender, that has a lot of chops, and that is really valuable.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I think that's a good place to end it. Thanks to everybody in the comments that has been hanging out with us the whole time. Appreciate your support
Shout out Ace Bouchard.
Yeah.
He almost hit a game winner against Charlotte as a rookie.
That game winner should have counted. They needed to add more time back on the clock, which they took off. They fucked up. Knicks got robbed once again. All right, thanks again for everybody that was in the comments rocking with us. Appreciate your support. Stacy, let the people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
Stacy Patton 89 on Twitter. To plug, I believe Prez is going to have an article on Jalen Martin dropping this week. Jalen Martin is the newest Knick. So I would check that out. The Knicks have another Knick who is unfortunately not playing Summer League, but Jacob Toppin, if that name sounds familiar, in case you have been living under a rock for the last few years while listening to this pod, his older brother, Obi Toppin, played for the Knicks. Anyway, Jacob Toppin was on Prez's podcast a couple years ago when he was at Kentucky. I would recommend listening to that because it's a great perspective on who he is as a player and what he's trying to do. And he may not play a prominent role for the Knicks next year, but if you're looking for some content on some of the new guys the Knicks have added, those are a couple of good places to go. And as always, Prez on prospects is as good as it gets.
Yes, Prez did good work there. I have nothing to plug myself, so I'll just plug all the work at Strickland, check out the pods and all that stuff. Check out the rundown, check out the Knicks Summer League if you're into that thing. They're playing again today at 5, I think. I will not be watching. I will not be commenting on Summer League. So if you're looking for Knicks Summer League commentary, check out Prez. I'm sure he'll be very, very interested in Jalen Martin's fucking shooting mechanics. He'll probably do a 17-part thread on that sometime soon. All right. That is our pod for today. I hope everybody has a great rest of whatever's left of your weekend, and I will see you on Friday.